Okay, Tony. So we talked about self. Let's turn to outlook, right? So outlook has to do with some of our preconceived notions. You talked about bias, our emotions. This past week, we released a podcast on the neuroscience of leadership, learning about these pathways that are created. When you work with somebody on outlook, how do we overcome things like defensiveness? What are some strategies about how do we become less defensive?
Yeah. So what's interesting to me about Outlook is self is more static, but once you add self and Outlook, it's dynamic. And what I mean by that is as soon as we engage with an important, complex, and relational situation, we end up having a lens that creates bias and it also creates emotions. And really, Outlook is about how do I create the most clear, well, actually, not create, how do I become aware of the outlook that I have? And how do I make choices around that to choose my best outlook? So, for example, we bring multiple biases, right? When we're looking at a situation, we bring biases around thinking our views are best. We bring biases around not wanting to change a perspective once we've established it. We bring bias around making judgments about people and discounting their situation. How do we understand that and make allowances for that? How do we become aware of our emotions? How do we become aware of when we're engaging in an important, complex situation? We a lot of times feel threats. We feel negative emotions, which don't enable us to be as successful or bring our best self into that situation. And so, what we talk about in the book is what are the practical ways that you can manage that? And we talk about first pausing. And pausing is understanding the best way to pause is it's hard to understand what your emotions are doing, but physically, sometimes we can understand that we've got a clenched jaw, that we've got a sinking feeling in our stomach, that we're feeling sweat, that we're feeling hot. Those are indicators that, hey, maybe I've been triggered. Maybe I need to regain balance. And then the second thing, which we all know, is breathe. How do you breathe? There's research around that our breathing mimics our emotions, and that means, and you being a police officer know that when you get excited, you start shallow, fast breathing. But what also we know is our emotions mimic our breathing, which means if we start to regulate our breathing, our emotions go down. We've been given a tool to be able to bring calmness to ourselves in threatening times. And when I mean threatening, I'm talking socially threatening, right?
Yeah.
Threatening times by just breathing. And then the third thing we talk about is labeling your emotion. Name it to tame it is what neuroscientists call it. And what the research, physical and neuro research shows is that if you can identify and label your emotion, it moves it from the more primitive amygdala to your prefrontal cortex where you can problem solve. And it starts to bring you back down to balance in relation to that. And so those are some of the practical things that we talk about in relation to how do you, in the moment, how do you make sure that you are bringing balance to your outlook so you can choose the best outlook for you to be able to move forward with action.